Hello everybody and welcome to my quick feature breakdown and review for Anno 1800's latest DLC, The Passage. So The Passage is the final piece of content being added to the Anno 1800 Season Pass, along with the Botanica and Sunken Treasures DLC. The Passage is the biggest content pack in the Season Pass, featuring an entirely new playable session set in the Arctic. There's 2 specialized tiers of population, 32 buildings, 13 new production goods, as well as a new quest line with 60 quests and over 80 new items. It really is rammed with content, and there's also new music, which is a personal favorite of mine. Now, alongside The Passage, Anno 1800 has received its 6th free update, now adding in co-op to the game. Previously, you could play multiplayer with friends, but you'd be in charge of a separate company. Now, with co-op, up to 4 players can all share responsibility within one company, and then play against other AI or even other groups of people for up to a total of 16 players. Now, as well as that, there's new statistics in the game for those that are analytically driven to check their production and consumption rates across every item, population tier, or island in the game. Lastly, the game is currently having a free week right now, when this video is currently out, until December 18th, where you can try out the co-op mode and experience the first 3 tiers of population, all while the game and Season Pass are currently discounted. So, it's quite the big week for Anno, and I for one have been eagerly anticipating this Passage DLC, as Anno 1800 is, without a doubt, my game of the year for 2019, something I never thought would be the case. If you want to see my review of Anno 1800 or any of its DLC reviews, or if you just picked up the game, maybe my guide could also help you out, just check the YouTube cards, the comments, or look in the description to find those links. So, let's talk about The Passage. Now, in order to actually reach the Arctic, you need to have unlocked the 4th tier of population, the Engineers, and when you do, you'll get a news bulletin calling you to launch an expedition to the Arctic. Engineers can take a bit of time to reach, but luckily, The Passage can be activated in ongoing campaigns, so no need for a full restart. The Passage is centered around the journey of John Faithful, who led an expedition up north and went missing. Now his determined wife offers you a reward if you aid her in her search for the lost expedition. Old Nate, the eccentric inventor that was introduced with the Sunken Treasures DLC, will join you here and lend a hand to provide additional quests in the Arctic. You don't need Sunken Treasures to have him in the game. Upon arrival, you'll meet the Inuit, who guide you through to the last known whereabouts of John, but it's blocked with ice, so you need to set up a colony, get production going in order to build icebreakers to carve through the ice. It's a charming little story with several cutscenes and fully voiced dialogue, which really continues the game's excellent attention to detail and quality. So let's talk about how the gameplay actually works in the Arctic. The new tiers of population up here are Explorers and Technicians, and there's an all new set of building chains and production goods that they utilize, though they also require some familiar goods you'll need to import from the old world. The main new mechanic that you're going to be wrestling with is heating. Heaters are a new building that need to be built close by homes and other production buildings, and they require a constant flow of coal to be powered. Now, without heating, your explorers will have an increased chance of sickness, and if left unattended, they'll die out and abandon their homes. Now, certain goods do also provide levels of heat, such as schnapps and sleeping bags. Sleeping bags are created when combining goose feathers and seal skin, so you'll have to look for somewhere else to settle and begin setting up trade between the islands. So the core loop here isn't much different than in the other biomes. Much like the New World, you just have access to some new goods, and sometimes you need to import the things that you can't find there. The main difference will be the heating, which forces you to kind of clump up your buildings a bit closer together and always have a supply of coal. Now, the main benefit to traveling to the Arctic is to obtain a new resource called natural gas. Gas can be used to power a new building, the gas-fired power plant, and this power plant operates the same as the power plant already in the game, but it doesn't rely on oil or railways to function, so it can be a big cost saver when compared to the amount of workers and money that you'd need to get oil production going, with oil tankers, harbors, oil extraction, railways, all syncing it all up. With gas, you just need to extract it and deliver it, just like any other type of good. However, gas can only be extracted from the tall glacial islands in the north that cannot be accessed by sea. Instead, they have to be accessed by air, with the new airship hangar building. The airship hangar is built in stages over time, much like the World's Fair, and you're actually guided through it the first time with the main quest line. Once the stages are complete, you can then begin manufacturing airships, and these can be used to colonize those glacial islands. You actually need gas to build one airship, but you can only get gas from the glaciers, so Old Nate gives you 2 airships worth of gas to kind of get you started. In order to get gas extraction set up, you need 250 technicians, which creates quite an interesting type of gameplay, as on the glaciers there's no trees, so these islands are fully dependent on outside deliveries to get them operational. Without trees, you can't get coal and you can't hunt, and without coastlines, you can't get food or warmth from whale oil or sealskin. So you'll have to set up deliveries with your airships to provide everything: coal, food, and extra amenities to get to the technicians. Only then will you be able to start producing gas, which you can use to transport back to the old world for that electricity, or you can use it to make more airships. The airships are a really great transport method. They hold 4 slots and they do travel quite fast. They also ignore pirates, so they're the safest method of transporting valuable goods. They also just look awesome. Apart from gas, there are other small benefits to the Arctic. Gold, for instance, will yield greater amounts in the Arctic for the same amount of workforce, as does fur. So if you want to maximize your economy, the Arctic is the place to export those items. You also have Old Nate in the north, who operates how he does in Sunken Treasures, which is to say that he uses scrap that you find in the Arctic to let you create unique items equipped in the airships and in the Arctic Lodges. The Arctic Lodges are a new building that are basically your trade unions of the north. They provide slots to buff production and people in an area of effect. It's worth noting that this scrap that you find in the Arctic is called Arctic scrap, so it's not the same as the Cape Trelawney scrap. In order to find scrap, you'll have to explore the North Passage. Now essentially, the north part of the map is permanently enshrouded in a sort of Arctic fog, but with airships you can fly over it to find shipwrecks and lost expeditions, yielding this scrap and other unique items. It's a pretty fun addition, but the Sunken Treasures kind of handles that a bit better in my opinion when you do the diving. After a while you will get a little tired of retreading the same ground only for it to get covered in fog again. There's also the Inuit, who may sell unique items and provide quests to fill your zoos and museums back home. Arctic wolves and sea lions are some of the ones I found in my time with the DLC. Now the Arctic as a whole is a really great addition to the game, but similarly to Sunken Treasures, it does have a bit of a linear concept to it. Whether in sandbox or not, you have to go through the questline and story to unlock it, and until you do, no other AI will actually colonize up there. And this means that it's just kind of an addition to the player, more so than the AI. I never saw them, for instance, build airships, but maybe I didn't give them enough time. Now personally for me, that's not that big of a factor. I enjoy the building aspects and figuring out production chains, but it is worth mentioning for people who want a bit more of a challenge and a bit more of a sandbox. You're not really going to find that up here. Each of the DLCs for Anno so far really have just increased the amount of money you make in the game by a huge amount. So much so that I don't even activate Sunken Treasures anymore, as it just destabilizes the economy and becomes way too easy. But I think the complexity with the Arctic, attempting to sustain these glacial islands in order to export gas, is a fun enough challenge to pursue every time. I think I'll always be turning this one on. If I was to be critical and maybe a little bit nitpicky, it is a bit of a shame that they couldn't have worked in more goods from the old world and new world to sustain everything, a true symbiotic relationship between them. I thought for sure that the Arctic was going to need oil for its heating, but it just uses coal, and you can find coal in the Arctic. Now the Arctic does require some stuff from both the old world and new world, but other than gas it doesn't really provide anything back. And this is probably because it's DLC, you know, so a tier of population isn't going to be depending on the Arctic for something, but even so, it would have been nice to see a greater dependency on each other both ways. If anything, the best benefit of the Arctic is probably just to build the airships. They're really, really good. The last thing that has to be mentioned is the visual style of the Arctic. It's absolutely breathtaking. I mean, the environments in this game just look so amazing, and it definitely feels distinct compared to the other sessions when it has that background music going as well. I'm a bit disappointed though that there's no ornaments or ways to make your Arctic outpost look a little bit nicer though. Now I can understand it's supposed to be this bare bones sort of explorer outpost, but I do think it would have been nice to have some fencing, some paved roads, and other recreational areas that might have needed heating as well perhaps. This could have been real endgame stuff so that, you know, once the colony's up and running, then maybe it would stand to reason that you can invest in some stone piers at your docks, maybe even a better heating system or something like that. I'm not too sure, but it felt a little bit lacking, because making cities look nice is always something I enjoy in Anno. After I set up my production chains, it sort of gives you something to spend your money on. So it felt a bit lacking towards the end in that regard. And that's really it for my overview or review of the DLC. I did really enjoy it. I just absolutely love Anno, and this is their best DLC yet for 1800. I hope they continue making more content for the game. My eye is gazing towards that southern continent now, and I would love to see a return to the Orient like in 1404. I would just hope that if they do make more DLC, they focus a little bit less on the narrative and linearity and more on the core of the game. Production chains, items, buildings, those things are the most important. And I enjoy the narratives, but, you know, I only enjoy them once, and this is a very long-form game, so I think that needs to be kept in mind. And that's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching, and remember to check out my other Anno 1800 videos and maybe even my 1404 video if you want a bit of a throwback. Thank you very much again. I'll see you in the next one.